my hair then.
Please don't fix your hair, Jimmy. This is an important moment, you know, in our touchdown. Your hair and the coffee, but no problem. Let's go on. So, guys, here we are. One more RWI touchdown, weekly touchdown. We here in Brazil, we are still in the midst of Carnival. It didn't officially end up in Wednesday, but it's still going on. People are all over the streets. And this is the beauty of Brazilian culture in this sense. It's incredible. And yeah, we have a lot of things to discuss. We have a very good chat around. But it's really nice to have you to update us a little bit about your doings around everything that has been happening with you, my friend. Aside, of course, your webcam I think that you still don't have a new webcam. We're going to try to fix this. Try to find you a new webcam. And yeah, feel free to open here our works and let's go on. I'm going to the kitchen now to do the coffee. So let's go.
Okay, right on. Thanks. Yeah. Again, sorry, I missed the last few of the recent.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tigers. What's that?
Oh, my audio wasn't quite good. Now it's better, right?
Oh, this is better.
I think you have to mute one of the.
Yeah.
Go on. Yeah, this is a little better.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, I want to catch up on some of the things you guys have been talking about, and I was just starting to say about how in terms of recent weeks for me, occupying attention has been what seems like a really nice and good and productive enriching of the whole AI conversation. So I found that really interesting, and it's kind of like the sense that it has, why it's sort of occupied attention is sort of like bit of a counterbalance to the exuberance is sort of how it comes out in the wash for me a little bit, because there's such a huge fast pace of all the AI stuff. So the conversation, Tiberius, that you convened in Montreal, I haven't really sufficiently absorbed and kind of learned about what all happened there. So I'm really behind on catching up on a lot of the different threads. So there seems to be quite a few of them. And Danilo, we chatted recently, Vinicius, there had been some conversations, and Danilo was at the recent chat, right? So that obviously relates. So I guess that if you're asking about recent highlights and things going on that have occupied some attention, it's probably centered around that. And I guess increasingly the whole value chain, because as you know, Tiberius, right, I have been occupied, I guess, with a fair bit of attention on, and you may have chatted with Bruce about it, but with the folks who are working with this digital identity and trying to sort of go next generation on sort of the infrastructure level around making things more connected to, having the technology, the human to technology governance is how they put it. Sort of ensuring that it doesn't become technology to human governance, but it's always sort of human to technology governance. At least we don't somehow put carts before horses too fully in this space, moving at this pace. So that's kind of I guess another part of it when I say, like, sure, there's kind of an enriching of the conversation, but there's also kind of a broadening of the perspective across the value chain, all the way from this real highly consented data which these folks are trying to advance, so that there's ethical basis and a grounding, and there can be some kind of linkage and trustable, reliable linkage and connectivity that one hopes improves, at least, and or leads towards some improved kind of benefits and outcomes from increasing adoption of and development of AI type stuff. So you know, it's, I guess I hate to go along with the fads and things, right? I always like to think maybe there's something new going on, but I'm right in there with all the AI stuff. You know, everyone seems to be talking about. So I guess that's where that's at to some extent, but there's a lot more, I guess, kind of extending from that in a bunch of different directions that I think you folks are all engaged with too. So, you know.
Yeah, but I think that it would be interesting for you, Tim, to share your perspective around the new way that we are going to net weave the cultural bridge between Taudao and Sensorica when it comes to Superfluous Man. And
Oh wow! Oh my God!
Yeah, yeah. And Chibi didn't have the opportunity to be there with us, so it would be nice if you can contextualize in your specific. Yes. Go on, my friend.
Oh geez. It's hard to know how to kind of begin on that. And I guess what I just tried to do was sort of zoom really far out a little bit and put a bit of an umbrella conversation around it. But within that, Danilo is interested, or there seems to be an intersection happening of with the symbiosis conversations and symbiototem and symbioware and the kinds of things that Danilo and Vinicius with him early on have been animating around you know, those ideas which are in that ICV cycles site and all that stuff. And so there's a really rich kind of bunch of threads that have been going on for a long time from Vinicius and Danilo and all the gang there, that are now seeming to find a place in the Superfluous Man story generation in a way that just it you know, it's tying in AI language models, you know, in different ways. And I can't, it's hard to describe the number of ways that everything kind of folds back on itself, and the richness of the sort of opportunities for learning and participation and diverse kind of uses of this AI in the story construction and in the generation of graphics and video. And we even talked about, I think, you know, game engine generation, stuff like that, you know, just the you know, explorations of the way that the AI can be employed in the story making, storytelling, story representation, story presentation type narrative development, right? So there's just a whole huge rich background latent that has capacity. And now just that recent one, I think with Danilo, it seemed like there's a really fertile opportunity to, or kind of ideas, set of imagination, set of ideas, or landscape around which to explore, that I think could really help realize what the Taudao Sensorica Bridge in support of Greens for Good was really aiming for, and maybe help it land in a place that can scale the participation and scale the knowledge translation and across the scales, right? Because one of the challenges, of course, that is with Greens for Good and these ventures and ideas is that it's at multiple levels and multiple scales that you're trying to sort of proliferate the invitation to participate across the different domains, right? And in different locales, and with the localization, there's just so much that you know, this might be equal to the complexity. It might be that we're arriving at kind of a bundle, if you like, a bundle or a whatever chord of activity and knowledge and skill and interest and passion and imagination and technologies and such that's almost that maybe is equal to what I hope was the original intention around the Taudao Sensorica Bridge to generate and support advancements for the Greens for Good, or starting from there for sure, but maybe other things too. Well,
yeah, I will complement a little bit. I'll do some complementation there, some better
some more stitch contextualization to for
Yeah,
what you just
my
said.
specialty is confusion. Remember, that's
Yeah, yeah. So no, but we all here understood what you just said, of course. But you see, TB, the thing that TB and Loading, the thing that is happened, was in part of the RWI co-creation. I have been talking with you guys about this. RWI, once more, is a Web3 cultural regenerative protocol that seeks to generate peer-to-peer coordination between people and projects, and between projects, right? Once more, peer-to-peer interactive coordination. And has a direct relationship with the types of paradigms that we're talking here in RWI. We're talking about profound regeneration. We're talking about the type of richness, the type of wealth of reach, the type of wealth. What type of wealth is important for us in this profound, let's say, transformation that we're passing by, that we are living it by in daily basis, when the old paradigms of the type of societies that we still live in, they are in a very complex collapse. They're in a collapsing mode, in the new one that is emerging, right? So we tackles with this. We tackles with this in the micro scale for the people, for each one in its project. So this sense, we're generating a type of environment, let's put it this way, a global environment that is enabling people to make this peer-to-peer interactive coordination between different types of contexts, clusters, and technologies. So this is very interesting and important because it's enabling conversations between Web2 projects related to sustainability and tourism, for instance, to Web3 refi projects that are talking about a new relationship with agroforestry, for instance. So imagine TB picking up Greens for Good and putting it in this context. So Greens for Good we're aiming to do with Superfluous Man as this speculative fiction storytelling is to give visibility to Greens for Good to all the projects that are co-creating RWI, right? Integrate these projects with the symbiosis environment that is related to the non-human connectivity, and make this a lifeline, like a Kundalini lifeline, to integrate all of these projects within this type of environment, you see? So we can even put briefing games there too, any type of projects, because we're going to give visibility through the storytelling of speculative fiction of Superfluous Man, right? So, and the people that is going to come around to co-create the story, because this is open, as you know, they're going to have the opportunity to get to know all the projects, to be involved with, to co-create with, you see? And that's why I think that this differs a lot of what we were doing last year, right? When we started to tissue, to weave, to netweave the bridge, the cultural bridge between Taudao and Sensorica. Because now it evolves. Now Taudao is going to be part of RWI too. Sensorica is going to be part of RWI too. So RWI as this cultural Web3 regenerative protocol is going to give the environment to have this type of interactive peer-to-peer coordination between projects, and it's going to have a direct relationship with refi, with regenerative finance. So all the projects involved with RWI, they're going to generate their own common pool of shareable resources. They're going to have an interface with all these refi protocols that are out there that are proven to be successful. like the Gitcoin, GiveF, or the Greenfield is the latest one. So that's what is happening literally, and I think that what Laurin and Stefan is what we start to talk here to generate and gather town an environment, you know, to talk about all the things that we're talking here about. It's going to be our new interface for this year, for 2024. It's going to be an exploration and an interface that it's going to be, and we're going to have the opportunity to do it in a different way. So in the way that considers Laurin research around AI, around bullshit, considers the infusion lab coming from Stefan's, and the way to pinpoint ourselves in whatever context, considers the OVN, the Open Value Network, coming from Sensorica, considers the way that TauDAO net weaves its own dynamics. You see, folks, I think that we're here in a very interesting tipping point for us, like for this touchdown here, for the things that we have been talking and exploring together evolve, like as a whole. So that's my two cents in this sense. That's why I just want to give this type of texture, Tim, in order for you to expand a little bit more.
Well, I was just gonna say, maybe like in a future, if maybe I probably missed it in one of the ones I missed in the recent weeks, but you know, have you had a chance to kind of have a session where we focus on learn more about RWI and that, or did I miss that one? Okay, maybe Tiberius, did you guys?
No.
Yeah.
No. It didn't happen yet. We're going to.
Yeah.
We're still going to do the onboarding of Sensorica. TB knows that we're planning to do that in March now. First weeks of March, we're going to do the onboarding of Sensorica to RWI's environment and ecosystem. So
okay, yeah,
it's going to happen in March. Yeah.
Oh, right on. That's great. Yeah. Because I wanted to learn more, and I know there's a lot, you know, there. But that's neat to hear that Stephen's work in GatherTown and in these skeuomorphic sort of spatial environments is going to be leveraged. I've been actually thinking I've been sort of thinking, of wanting to find ways to apply it and explore and experiment with that. Just to do it, just to get on with it, just to be applying it so that we can iterate and learn with it and discover things about it. So I don't know what, Lauren, you guys have already sort of sorted out or how to do that, but that's really, that's great. Glad to hear.
There's actually, we started the year with actually two new developments here to make this exploration in the GatherTown space of Infusion Lab with Stefan, right? And to see how we can apply those different environments, tables that Laurin calls, to interact with people when we start to really to invite them here. At the same time, last week I shared with one of TB's invitees. He's not here this week, but that's okay. I shared a little bit of the exploration and research that I did with a lot of people in 2018 concerning complexity doing, right, dynamics, and how we can resignify the way that we see peer-to-peer dynamics in a complex way. And so we talked about closeness. We talk about the way that you can generate the interest of people to co-create things, literally, not be involved only because there's a salary there, there's a pay there. So that was very interesting. And TB made accounts about that in a very OVN Sensorica fashion. If you like to talk a little bit about that too, TB, that would be interesting. I really like the way that you related to Sensorica OVN dynamics, so was very interesting. And so, and now we have this, you know, this background radiation, let's put it this way, with the superfluous man, Riri, and superfluous man being the Kundalini line, and Riri being this environment that's going to, you know, is going to enable us to make all sorts of peer-to-peer coordination within people in projects and projects and projects. So that's basically it. So Tibi, feel free, man, to weigh in your always very good, fresh perspectives.
But is that in relation to the discussion that we had last time?
Yeah, you can start there. You can start there. Feel free.
Yeah, actually, yeah, the discussion continues with that guy. He's really onto something, but yeah, Tim, just to get you up to speed, is somebody that used to work for developers.
It's Kimberly, his name, isn't it? Kimberly,
yeah. Yeah, thank you for reminding me. He worked on developing senior homes, and especially for expats. So these are European retirees that go somewhere in Asia to spend their time there. And yeah, so there's companies and developers that provide, you know, the habitation and activities for them. There's a whole industry, and he's looking into some other type of services, so to speak. But yeah, he's kind of interested in these peer-to-peer ideas, maybe even regenerative ideas. So he's thinking about mixing education and habitation, and mixing different generations in a space. And then he arrived at the metaphor that I really liked. It speaks about the trees and the birds. The trees being these fixed assets that you know, you can think of in different ways: private property, shared property, even on the medium form of property, and the birds being these people, not only retiree, that are free to go from tree to tree without being tied to, I don't know, some property or entitlement, you know. So yeah, it's a nice discussion. It's a nice discussion about I think how once you're not bound to a locality because of your job or kids, and you have more time on your hands, how do you live your life, and what are the arrangements that are possible for you to live your life, and focus more on experience rather than, you know, ownership. You know, I have a house down south and I go there every year. You know, focus on the experience, and maybe also move away from traditional business models, and instead of just providing a service, well, have these people also get involved in the local community in some ways, not just by paying for their stay there, you know. Yeah, so it's really rich, it's really nice. Let's see where this leads. I think we're gonna move the discussion towards stuff like that is more technical, like how you can account for, you know, contributions to these kind of things, NRP, stuff like that. Get more into the OVN model. Yeah, that's a nice discussion that we had. So it was unexpected. and I think was very rich. And Vinny, he's citing you in his last email that I got yesterday, and your experience with co-living and moving around, the nomadic life with your peers. So I'm glad that this informed his thinking process. Then I've been for the few days I've been doing some revisions of the wiki, dove into some subjects because Michel Bounds was prompting us on Twitter to to look into some pages. So I published that on the Sensorica Discord. So I was like, yeah, I took the time to do a bit more of thinking. About the possibility of, about peer-to-peer, and how it finds itself in the current economy, and what are the conditions for peer-to-peer to, is it possible for peer-to-peer to gain more ground and perhaps one day become dominant economic logic, or maybe not. So that was a very nice and interesting thought process there. Yeah, and next week, this Tuesday, we will have another gathering at the Sensorica Lab, and this time it will be about politics. And as usual, I will provide my peer-to-peer perspective and how representative competitive democracy is unsustainable, has been hijacked, and and I'm gonna advocate for some reforms, at least make people understand that maybe what we call democracy is just has become an empty word, and get people interested in starting to rethink this, not always assume that it is what it is, but starting to analyze and rethink this. So it's going to be a very interesting conversation. I think we will record it too, but it's going to be in French. So it's a little bit.
Yeah, only Lauren will be able to understand. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, yeah, talking about democracy, I think that Tim has some interesting new work, the ignition.
It's not, well, it's not new, I guess. For
new in the sense like the format, the configuration.
No. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I hear you. I just I guess the reason I thought to highlight that or say that is because the sort of feedback loop type that represents kind of what governance is something that caught my imagination a very long time ago in terms of systems, like systems designs and engineering and things, and in terms of and then the whole cybernetics bit. So exploring all the different kind of ways that occurs in different domains and systems has always been something, I guess, that I felt has been under supported by technologies and in terms of what's available, like how it could be supported by technology. So it's been a long kind of engagement with that question, but it's been exciting and also overwhelming, I think, not just for me, with this what I think more than me comes to call it like a Cambrian explosion in governance experimentation and exploration, that the whole DAO and the Web3 technologies and self-sovereign identities and things have sort of cast into the conversation in really intense and active ways that are very connected and connecting with the real world in so many ways, and increasingly so rapidly. So it's sort of been, kind of a long-term, kind of almost a little bit solitary kind of I guess a road in a large way, at least compared to what it feels like now. And I don't know how much of my context or my sort of somehow my just in collaborations and involvements and interests is makes it feel more intense, but it does feel like a really turbulent and fast moving and complex kind of nexus of interests and activities and passions and resources and such around this idea of governance. So yeah, so it's been a long kind of term thing, and the AI language models create, I think, new opportunities for augmenting capacity for the kind of dialogue and discussion and deliberation and such that that supports democratic activity. So I think that's maybe what Vinicius is alluding to. So, and then, as you know, like we had that, remember we had that group that showed up and they started something like an e-democracy DAO. So that was kind of disappointing to see that just sort of fizzle out. And so, I mean, chatting with Vinicius the other day about kind of kickstarting something like that again in some kind of context. So I haven't sort of sorted out how to do that. So I think that's what some of the recent conversations around, democratic type things has been. And not to mention, I mean, it almost goes without saying. Here I am talking about this overwhelming blah blah blah, and it goes without saying when you look at sort of what's going on at the macro scale right now. I mean, you've never seen the word democracy mentioned in the news, I think, more than in in high, in highly pitched language and tones and across so many different domains. I mean, it's obviously goes well beyond AI and DAOs today for a lot of reasons. So it's pretty intense and it can be overwhelming, I think. And so I'm just tying it back to the previous conversation, the conversations around superfluous man and Danilo's work and things like this, right? It's really, and sort of the richness of the dialogue that seems to be emerging there and such, and the breadth of consideration around the whole data value chain, right? It's really, I guess, helps to ameliorate that overwhelming intensity, to know that those conversations are happening and then, people are really engaging with that. So
Tim, but here's a question. I want to see if I'm crazy or if we can coordinate somehow here on this idea. So, when some things are created, and then the whole environment changes and the way they function becomes insufficient. There's many things that appear around in the ecosystem that kind of undermines that thing, and it becomes not clear that it's not working anymore. But at the same time, you have this idea that it's obsolete. It has become unsustainable. That's how I think about democracy. That's how I see the form of democracy that we have, the representative. I call it always representative competitive democracy. Just to make sure that we're clear about some important aspects. A representative, so it's not you, but someone that you choose. And competitive is that there are camps and is divisive and has all these other consequences. But I, with technology like information technology, internet, AI, the way the economy has been monopolized or centralized, over the course of decades. The way government has been kind of, the influence over government of industries has been increasing. It just seems to me that there is no way we can patch this model. It's like it's beyond, everything there's so many things that undermine it that it's not about reforming this kind of social governance. It's like it's outdated. No matter how much you want to patch it, it'll never be sustainable again. So we have reached this point where um, you know, choosing another president, hoping that things will be fixed, is just a dream. It's just a that's how I see. I don't know how you see it. Do you still have faith?
Well, I was just chatting with someone walking yesterday evening, and this exact kind of, I think, feeling and moment that you're talking about kind of came into the conversation. And the way I put what to me sounds like what you're saying was that this idea that increasingly these systems like a democracy or what have you, or the system, well, the implementation as exists today in many places,
Yeah.
right? Is collapsing under the weight of the complexity of the sort of socio-technical environment. It's just like, you know, it's just the bubbling out and bubbling up of ideas, innovations, and possibilities and options across so many domains, so many disciplines, and variations and variants across regions and geographies, and intersecting with, you know, it's increasingly the case that sort of complexity it has the greater capacity to overwhelm. And I think I was reading, I think it was Michelle Bowens, I think someone, and then talking about the variation and the shifting in these sorts of balance of centralization, decentralization in relation to the extant technological base, in relation to what is available in terms of different technologies in different sectors. And I think they were anyway. So while that's happening, so you sort of articulated it kind of, I think, in the collapsing under the weight part. But what I hope to have spoken to earlier, a little bit at least, in addition to that, is the rich possibilities of not technological fix, and that's the problem, and that might be the risk, but the possibilities of applying some of these new tools, but to Vinicius's maybe point, if you like, and I say that not in terms of this conversation, but maybe as a influence over time, and other folks that I was mentioning and alluding to earlier specifically, it's that sort of appreciation that the old sort of flat representational perspective on it might not be adequate to and that you need to take this sort of multi-generational, multi-step, process, more incremental understanding of things, but also across scales. So I guess what I'm thinking here is around education. When you say that this system is unsupported, can't work, one of the things that comes to mind is, okay, well, there's things that need to also be in place to support the conditions for and the capacity to enact the system as increasingly limited as it may be. You know, there are a lot of things that in parallel are might be falling behind a little bit in terms of making it as viable and productive as it promises to be. So I guess what I'm saying is you can support present systems so much better with so many different ways and levels and things, but you also, to your point, can see that that fit for purpose comes into question as the socio-technical complexity just becomes so much. Like David, someone sent me an email recently and pointed out and said, listen, from Plato comes this idea that democracy must never become too onerous, too labor intensive, too complex, too difficult for people to engage and participate in, or else that they're actually tempted to say, oh, I can't manage this. Could some authoritarian command and control entity step in and just take care of it all for me, right? So that's the risk that this Plato guy sort of mentioned, that this guy mentioned in the email. And he said, but on the other hand, this other fellow who said, John Dewey, who said, well, unfortunately, the only cure for not enough democracy is more democracy. And this speaks to that sort of ends and means questions, right? And so when he says that, what I hear is more better ways that these new tools can be applied to create more better kinds of democracy that overcome the lapses and gaps that you're talking about, Tiberius, because there is constantly a risk to simply accepting whatever when the existing opportunities to engage in the existing formats seem to become untrusted, unreliable, distant, remote, inaccessible, whatever, you know? So
Yeah,
I agree with you in a lot of ways, but I try to stay positive, you know?
Yeah, Tim, but let me just chime in a little bit and just to share this historic context. You see, historically speaking, there was this first co-creation of democracy in the ancient Greek in 500 before Christ, BC, right? Where is a direct democracy peer-to-peer between people. It lasted 500 years, right? 500 years. And then you have a period of monarchies, emperors, of autocracies, all sorts of autocracies. Then in the modern era, there's the creation of representative democracy. You see, validating the nation state. This was a new thing 300 years ago, right? And this thing is not, there wasn't at that time the type of connectivity or complexities all over around us, right? So it was a very new thing, really, to experiment with, and it made sense for a local and even bioregional dynamics, but not in a planetary scale. And it didn't have the interconnectivity that we have nowadays, right? I know that it's a flawed interconnectivity because it's bugged with algorithms when it comes to Web 2, for instance. But Web 3 is trying to, is a breath of fresh air, trying to be a breath of fresh air in this sense, at least in my understanding. But now we have the possibility to reinvent. We have the third invention of democracy now. And for me, it's more like a coming back, a circling back to the Greeks and trying to understand how, democracy not as a way to, to manage politically nation states, but a way to live through it. It is a way of life. It's something that it relates to openness, to conversations, to dialogue, to innovation, to social innovation, and something like that. So maybe now we have the opportunity to co-create a new type, the third invention of democracy for the 20th century. This is my 2 cents on this. So go back to you, Tim.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, I don't have much more to add at the moment. I mean, but yeah, yeah, that's a nice way of kind of I think contextualizing almost bundle, like because when you put it like that and you mention that sort of way of life, kind of an active participatory kind of engagement, it sort of does, it creates like the thread that is like covers the whole space and the whole ground. So I mean, that's a nice way to put it. We should develop more along what you just said. And I know complexity doing, that phrase that you've sort of taught us in recent years, sounds like the word for part of that, or a more abstract statement of something that influences what you just said about that. But I think that's something I would learn from other people more too.
Yeah, I'm not trying to simplify it. I'm just trying to give it a optimist and fresh take on it, and saying that even now, remember our touchdown here, TB and Loading, Stefan was present. I think that you weren't, Tim. We were talking about different types of intelligences and how complex is the human intelligence, how the human intelligence is so singular in so many ways, not unique, but singular. And it was the human intelligence that generates this artificial intelligence. And it's just something that is going to always to be is part of our cybernetics. We are cybernetic beings, and so in this sense, we have the capability to totally transform ourselves as a species. We've been doing that in various ways through the ages, right? So I understand that artificial intelligence will play a role in the co-creation of this new type of democracy. But for me, the most important thing is this complex doing peer-to-peer dynamics that is already happening, but we're not aware of it as something that generates value. You know, it generates a lot of value for people in a very micro scale, and we don't have the haptics haptics to capture the signals and the signaling that is coming out of this type of thing.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to suggest you were oversimplifying or simplifying. I meant to kind of say, I think what you're saying now is that in reaching, in talking about way of life or reaching that kind of, and talking about that direct engagement in your peer-to-peer approach, it entails the whole picture. Do you know what I mean? That's what I tried to say. Is that it's a powerful kind of approach. Right? That's all I meant to say.
Yeah, and it has a direct relationship to be in Louding with what we talked last week, the co-creation of global complex doing superstructures, right? Global superstructures in a way that global superstructures of permanences. Remember that we talked about that last week? So yeah, so and this thing is not, this thing seems is not a thing because, you know, mostly and there's not so much people talking about but it is a thing, as a phenomenon, is an emerging phenomenon. So it's quite difficult for us to be in the storm to talk about the storm, right? So for me, what is happening with all this interconnectivity between different social contexts, economic contexts, different perspectives, all the trash, all the digital trash that goes around in Web2, for instance, or the algorithmic digital trash with its own creating bubbles between people or bubbles for each one of us, is the type of experience that we, cybernetically speaking, in a certain way, had to go through it to evolve cybernetically to go to this other place that we still don't manage to understand it because it's emerging, right? It's something that is complex and it's emerging. And the other thing is that we talked about this in other RWI touchdowns, is that we are starting to embed complexities, all sorts of complexities to our lives. You see, it seems, and COVID played a huge role in this. COVID, in the sense that broke the system, you know, interrupted for at least for a few months the way that we generate normalcy, generate our daily lives, and it broke it and make people think, whoa, we can do differently. I know that there's loads of people that wants to come back, circle back to what was before COVID, but there's much more people, so much more people that are interested to co-create new ways to live and to be in this planet. So here we go. So we are within the midst of this opportunity, this civilizational opportunity, to really reimagine not only wealth but everything about our lives, right? So that's what I'm saying. So it's different. It's very difficult and it's challenging to to synthesize what we're talking here about, because it's chaotically emerging right now, and it's defying the system the macro system that we created in economic level, political level, and things like that. But yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to say here. In making some making a type of commentary that, in my understanding, has the power to reimagine and re-signify the content, the concept, and the context of democracy for the 20th century. That's what I'm trying to say here, in the sense that it's not in the ancient Greeks. It was something very minuscule, related to the polis, to the city, to those people there, and the modern the representative democracy was in the context of the nation state, right? Something wider, bigger, but having representatives and having a lot of space to be imperfect. Not that democracy is perfect, because it's not seeking perfection. It's seeking humanness, the capability for us to innovate socially, economically, at all times. But this type of democracy doesn't have what it needs to have to deal with the types of complexities that we started to generate with all this interconnectivity between us. You see, and that's why I sense that the breaking of the macro narratives and the opening to value the type of micro narratives that we can generate between us in a global perspective is what is actually happening, but it's not being observed, it's not being qualified as something disruptive or new, right? But it's happening. In my understanding, it's happening all over around. But we're still talking like, and I agree with that, TD. We're still talking like is it going to be the next president, or the other party, or is it going to be Web3 with crypto and blockchain? No. I think the thing is much more profound than that, and because we're really living in a very complex collapse, extremely complex collapse. And for me, what is emerging is something related in this sense to this type of complexity.
Yeah, but somehow we need to get out of this game that became very powerful, because the machine, the political machine, right? It exists. The political machine always tries to, get you into the next cycle, pumping hope in you that okay, now it's gonna be things are gonna change. Okay, so this is your alternative. Vote for the other guy. And so we always get like this through these cycles of disappointment and false hope, right? Hope that is put into us. So we have to get out of this game. You know what I'm saying? It's like a cycle that it traps you inside. Okay, and we have to get out of this game somehow. We're like junkies, going from needing to drink and withdrawal, and going back into drinking and withdrawal. You know what I'm saying? We're like trapped into this cycle. Meanwhile, the political system loses legitimacy. So in history, what happened is that we chopped the head of kings because they became not just irrelevant for the new economic reality of the industrial age, but they were also, they became illegitimate, meaning that they did not represent the well-being of their subjects. Okay, they could not guarantee that they could take care of their subjects. So and that was the social contract, right? I will protect you. So then it turned into revolutions, right? So that's the kind of a danger now, that as the political system loses legitimacy, and we can people are screaming everywhere about this. I mean, there's so much. Just go on Twitter and see how much people are becoming against the left and the right. You know what I'm saying? And are saying, I just don't associate anymore with that kind of shit. And you know, I'm just a human being looking at things and trying to make sense of reality. Almost on every issue, you know, like you know, if you know, like take the border issue in the United States, you see people that are just looking at the situation from a human perspective and say, you know, don't try not to analyze it through the lenses left or right, you know, that are projected on people just to win elections. So yeah, so it's losing legitimacy. People are seeing through this. So we're kind of approaching a breaking point. If I sound negative, it's because there is a danger of that. You know, so in a sense, what I'm trying to say is, like, let's not keep that. Okay, this could be explosive, and it already is. I mean, look at Europe. You know, Europe, Brussels was burning the other day. Farmers were on the streets shooting shit at the institutions. That's the most clear way of saying, you know, we don't agree with what you're doing. And it's not about one political party in power. It's more than that. It's a rebellion against the system. And these are the farmers with the pitchforks. These are the pitchforks. They're out, you know. But now pitchforks have become the tractors, the tractors of the farmers, right? That they're blocking highways. These are the pitchforks, you know. So we've seen that. So there is a revolution going on.
I just want to say I heard a podcast or something yesterday, and I just interject that the comment they made is still ringing in my ears, and I'm wanting to look into who said it and when or whatever. But they made the point. They said in revolutions, it's the most vulnerable and disadvantaged who suffer the most. So that kind of served as a bit of a thought. And then I just want to say, he understood. And I guess the reason I'm optimistic is because of the very real possibilities you're talking about in terms of, you know, to what extent could that be avoided if, in fact, it is the case that there is that kind of disproportionate impact, and that to whatever extent, you know, there are opportunities for renewal, renovation, regeneration is the word, right, of these systems and processes, that certainly ought to be taken up and acted on as well, you know, in light of everything that you just said, especially. So that too is all I want to say.
Yeah, I'm I'm doing something here. If you want to know, Tim, I'm always pushing for it. If you watch my Twitter, I've been advocating for that for a long time. Seeding the space with these ideas. And there's a mechanism in Canada, which is for people to spoil their votes during an election, and the spoiled votes are counted. They are accounted for. If you spoil your vote, we can know exactly how many votes have not been counted. Not how many people have not voted, but how many votes have not been counted. You can also know how many people didn't vote, okay, because you know how many people are eligible to vote. But when people go vote, that's an act, you know, so people are actually waking up in the morning and going and voting. but they're spoiling the vote, so that has a meaning, okay? And we know exactly how many votes have been spoiled. And we can know with pretty good accuracy how many people have done that intentionally by subtracting spoil votes in normal years, right? So that's a referendum. That's precisely that's a referendum. So you're hijacking an election. It's paid by the government, with government money, I mean, and and you're just counting how many people say I do not agree, I do not consent to this system anymore. Okay, and that's a referendum. It's an indirect referendum. You don't present it as such, you know, but you can have you know, activities during the election that advocates for spoiling your vote as an option that is presented in parallel to the political parties in place. It may be attacked by the government as you know, subverting democracy and inciting people not to participate. You know, whatever. Somebody may go to jail for a while for being you know, trying to overturn the system, whatever. Everything is possible in Canada, so there's that risk, but but it may be minor. So and then hopefully, you know, if the results are amazing, that could trigger a constitutional crisis. That could say, well, these people that people just voted have no legitimacy because actually, let's say, suppose hypothetically, the majority of the people that went to vote said that they don't believe in this game anymore. And it's only a small minority that actually voted for these people that now are supposedly, you know, in power. What legitimacy do they have? So since you have the number, since you run a referendum and you have the number, being, you know, pushing this into the media in a smart way, you could have a constitutional crisis and national debate on on governance, right? And then the the whole thing is, how do you drive this process so that we put everything on the table and you know, question representative competitive democracy as as we have it, and maybe some ideas will bubble up, but you're kicking in motion you know, a public, you know, a democratic process, you know, a participatory process, right? To rethink governance, and the trigger is this referendum, right? You know, so yeah, that's what I'm trying to push on my side.
Yeah. So
it is a kind of a soft coup, you know, if you want to think in terms of revolution, but it's non-violent because it leads to debates, it leads to discussions. You know, it's not going on the street and banging on walls and shooting shit on the parliament. And but you know, it's nobody speaks about the numbers, how many people are disenfranchised with the political system, where you can hijack the election to actually come up with a number, and if that number is good, that can trigger this kind of process, you know.
yeah, and I think there can be that can be even doubly or triply powerful to weave that together with maybe other kinds of alternative engagements in parallel. Does not necessarily synchronously in time, but maybe conceived of in the same breath as what you're talking about, or in the same sort of direction with the same motivations, but is a more or is a engagement in the kind of calmer, reflective, constructive collaborations as well, like which are going on, of course, all around in other things with related to the historical stuff, right?
Yeah,
but,
all these things can bubble up and be put on the table if we have a national debate on social governance, but you need a trigger.
yeah,
how do you you know?
And I guess the what's underpinning my you know, seeking to integrate these different things a little bit or put them together is that I think that, like that expression earlier about kind of the sense of collapsing under the weight of a socio-technical complexity and things like this, and people talk about polycrisis and all that, you know, you know, and to the extent that you make that analogy with long antiquated concepts of governance, it's a matter of tractability, right? It's oftentimes the case, like asymmetries in information and misaligned incentives and things that are systemic, right? We know that, like many people here definitely know about that idea. And so the statements of like multi-scale, multi-level is just an attempt to kind of speak to that. And I guess what I'm trying to say is like, you know, when you talked about issues and people saying, well, I'm just a person trying to deal with the complexity and increasing that perspective kind of being surfaced, you know, that's kind of the basis of the opportunity for both what you're talking about and what I'm talking about. And it also speaks to that sense. And I guess what I'm saying is the folks who are engaged and fully directly daily involved in the political machinery of the democratic kind of processes as they exist today, they are also those people. They are also caught up in the confusion, and they are finding intractable the present challenges across these areas, right? So but they are, you know, you're on, you know, you're at different experimental laboratories of aircraft manufacture, and they're trying to change their engine, and they probably don't even have time to think about changing their engine in the plane that they're flying. Do you know what I mean? So, and because they're swimming in that water, they often won't see the opportunities that you're seeing externally with all the different perspectives that are coming into it, right? So that's all I'm trying to kind of advocate for a little bit, is to say, you know, we're all kind of caught up in our own little knots of confusion, and with the complexity of things these days, it's you know, there's so many opportunities to help each other.
Yeah, and that's
well.
and that's why, Tim. I think and understand that the chessboard as a species that we have now is not the old Cold War that we live in the second half of the 20th century between United States and the Soviet Union. And it's not the Cold War that it seems that is rising up between United States and China, because this type of geopolitical game, right? It's a win-lose game, right? It's not a win-win-win-win dynamics. Is broken. It's broken. This type of interconnectivity, even this flawed interconnectivity that I talked about that we have in Web 2, made the possibility of most of our species to be interconnected. Because I must remember, there's 4.5 billion people in this planet that doesn't have this type of internet that we're having here. They only have the internet that's coming from telephone operators, like those. Remember those cell phones that you have that only SMS as a way to connect? That's the type of internet that 4.5 billion people of our species has in all sorts of countries in Africa, in Asia, even here in South Americas and Central America, right? So even this type of cooperative internet, the so-called Web 2 with Alpha, with Meta, with Amazon, X, it's not out there as a whole. It's not everybody that has it. So we have a huge opportunity with this 4.5 billion folks that are not captured, are still captured by nation states, are still captured by authoritarian or totalitarian nation states, right? With ethnic wars that we see happening all over Africa, for instance. But there's opportunity there for something like Bitcoin, for instance, that is generating electricity in Uganda, in Rwanda, in Mauritania, in Congo, that is totally explored by cobalt, as you guys may know, slavery even. But what I'm saying is that there's if you want to talk about huge, in a more macro dimension, there's opportunity to co-create a new type of cybernetics with this 4.5 billion people. And there's already all sorts of down-to-earth projects, even within Web3, within ReFi, that is trying to search out. That is not coming from governments, not coming from corporations, it's coming from people, from tribes, from little cities, from peer-to-peer dynamics. So you see, if I could put a number, we're talking about 100 million people. At least I know that 100 million people is just a percentage of 8 billion, but there's at least 100 million people in this planet that understands that we can create a new form to legitimate our way of living that is not related to this macro narratives of this financial capitalism that doesn't generate any type of value for nothing, only money, piling money and money, only accumulating, doing the piling of money in the type of money that doesn't have any value, in the sense that, you know, fiat money is a flawed currency, as we know. And so there's and democracy is part of this mist, you know, is part of this context. So the opportunity for democracy, in my understanding, is for us to reimagine and re-signify democracy in this complexity doing in way that we're living now. That's the opportunity that I see. And I'm not talking only in theory, as you guys know. I'm actually doing these things. I'm actually living them here in Brazil. And we're starting to connect it with all sorts of realities all over the planet. So it's not something that is rhetorical or theoretical. I'm talking about something that in the, you know, we talked about the in-betweeners last week, TB, Lauren, and yeah, we're thriving through the fissures, the in-betweeners of the fissures. Yes, that's it too. The in-betweeners of the fissures of the old paradigm, the old complexing paradigm. That's basically what I'm talking about. And I'm not saying that this is the solution. So because that's the thing. We're generating a type of reality for ourselves that is not more that global oneness, you know, macro global oneness reality that we were living in, totally unaware of it, or aware of it, but not critically aware of it before COVID-19, right? So that's what I'm trying to say here. That's the opportunity that we here are already doubting with it, and it's not comprehensible for who is in actually, you know, having this reactionary circling back to what it was before COVID thing. Yeah, it's not understandable for these folks. So it's not understandable for the actual ethos and status quo of the society as we are. But as I said, is emerging in a very decentralized and distributed way. That's what I'm trying to say, basically.
It's kind of, as I listen, it's kind of like this picture that's up here, and I wasn't at the conversation when you discussed it. So I want to kind of maybe possibly revisit that, like to understand better. But if I understand what it's saying as it's drawn here and what you just said, it's kind of like one has to take that picture on the far right, yeah, and imagine it as a whole, kind of almost like a network as opposed to just one, right? It's within that kind of maybe the word, I don't know, you used the word tissuing earlier, but that kind of sounds like a little bit of what I'm getting at. But the idea of, you know, the idea of it there being kind of a vascular metabolic network that is constructed from more of the picture on the right than those other ones, or is able to integrate and somehow beneficially activate the potentials when there's a whole network that's formed by things that have arrived at that degree of maturity is not the right word, but degree of transformation that you're speaking to with this picture, right? So it's not just the one line on the right, it's like a whole complex and network of such kinds of things that emerge from this picture that I think, if I understand this process.
Yeah, Tim, in 2018, we started to do these investigations, these explorations, even with people coming from the fields of people coming from all fields that studies and tries to understand the phenomenon of complexity itself, coming from cybernetics, you know, coming from inference. How is the name? Oh my gosh.
Active inference.
Yeah. Yes, active inference. We were trying to tackle, you see, to touch this elephant. We try to understand and touch this. Understand what was the elephant in the planet for our species that was emerging as a phenomenon that is not being captured by the actual ethos and status quo of society as we are. And this type of synthesis that you're seeing here was one of the takeoffs that we got it out of it. Understand that we are generating this global superstructures of permanences, and we still don't have haptics to understand this and value this as an emerging phenomenon of our own evolution as a species. So that was the type of exploration that we were doing in 2018 through E2 Glass, right? And all the things that you get to know after, like Taudao, like even Utopia, Taudao, and now this cultural Web3 protocol, RWI, has a direct relationship with this investigation, with this exploration that we've been doing for years.
Right on. Yeah.
And so I know that it seems like I'm talking about something that it seems not realistic, or it doesn't give any grounding for people at large, because we're talking about something that is very meta. We're talking about something that is still being observed as an emergent phenomenon, you know, and so it can't be categorized. You see, it can't be classified yet, but it's in the making. You know, is in the making, and so it generates this huge field, this huge co-creative field to generate all sorts of different types of transition between the old nation-state corporation paradigm for a new emerging decentralized paradigm. But it's extremely hybrid. What I'm saying is that we're going to still live with the nation states. We're going to still live with the corporations, but it's going to be there in between, you know. It's going to be there in between, thriving in between this cryptic and wholesome macro narratives of corporations and nation states, but it's going to be there. Mm-hmm. For instance, TB, when you look to the RFI environment, people, and you've been looking at this with the network states thing and with the coordination thing, this has a direct relationship with this phenomenon that people are not talking about. You see?
Yeah, and they'll influence each other. That's what's exciting, is to imagine also that, you know, like the influences once that white space in a way that you're speaking to, you know, capacity is emerging in those ways, then the figure ground of the picture is adjusted and the figure is influenced by the new ground as well. So, you know, there's a interpenetration, interaction of those things going on too. So that's just like to Tiberius's point earlier, there's different kind of ways, and that's yeah, I think that organismic kind of conception of the complexity is helpful, and it came up a lot in the conversation, and I think it comes up because it's helpful in capturing that multi-scale, multi-level complexity, right? And you know, so what you're saying with the complexity doing it kind of by taking that doing part and it immediately frames in that embodied kind of sense, which is again, anyway, equal to the complexity, I think, of what you're talking about. So yeah, I don't know. I might be more confused now than when we started, but it feels like we learned a lot, and I'm really enjoying the conversation. And I want to, yeah, anyway, there's so much more to talk about in the direction that you're talking about. And I guess what I'm getting at is that when I said earlier that I didn't mean to say that the complexity doing and such is a simplifying thing meant to sort of wrap up in a summary. What I was trying to say is that it's more like a generator. It's more like like in string theory, it's more like a fundamental particle of the right form, which embodies or encapsulates the full thread, because it's an active participatory and all of that. And you're talking about complexity doing, right? That the learning is happening in different ways over a period of time, individually as well as in groups and such. And that engagement becomes its own generator for the kinds of influences that can induce sort of the changes and things and work that we're talking about in a lot of these areas, right? And so that the sort of ontology of the kind of thinking, whatever, the problem solving isn't so flat. Because I think what Tiberius is pointing to when he's saying like, oh, this system, da 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 da, or we talk about when we say, oh, collapsing under the complexity, what we're saying is that the perspectives seem to be a little bit too flat, given the increasing intricacy of the landscape, you know, and you just can't kind of lay that tablecloth on that particular table. Just ain't gonna work. So, you know, that's what I'm getting at when you talk about the complexity doing, and it speaks to kind of that organismic thing, and that's not nothing fancy or anything other than trying to come up with richer ontologies that are equal to this complexity, right? So I'd like to want to hear more, learn more about the complexity doing stuff, and if that ties into RWI, then we should revisit that. It'd be great.
Yeah, that's it, Tim. You summarize it beautifully as usual. And the confusion is part of it, because we're talking about the open learning paradigm, not the schooling paradigm, right? So we're all always confused. We're always asking questions. That's a very healthy thing, right? And yes,
you keep searching that way. You keep searching anyway.
Yeah, in a sense, complexity doing is like the spooky action in the distance, the quantum physics, right? So it's not perceived by us. We're not aware of it, but it's happening, right? Yeah. So guys, that's pretty much it. Let's wrap up here. I really loved the way that we were able to navigate today between our perspectives, and I hope to be that this serves a little bit as a context for your opening peer-to-peer statement in the encounter that you guys are going to do next week, right? So that's if you want just to who wants to check out and do a little bit of a wrap up, let's go for it.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for your contribution. You enriched my plans for next week's gathering on politics. So yeah, that's very interesting, and I'll report back with the the findings or the vibe that we'll get from this event. Yeah, thank you very much. I have some serious cooking here to make today, so I'm gonna let you go with my a view from my kitchen mess.
Whoa!
We're making a minestrone
Beautiful.
today. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going there. Please separate the plates for me, please.
All right, have a nice rest of the day, guys.
Thanks.
Hey, Lauren, love you, Lauren. Always doing all things. You are the complexity doing me. You're always doing a lot of things at the same time. That's it, Lauren. Yeah.
Nice to catch up,
So-
guys.
Yeah, that was great, Lauren. And bye, Chin. See you around. See you guys around.
Thanks. Take care, everyone. Bye.